ferry is located along the southeast coast of Australia. Official records show the first settlement of the land was in 1827.
I can only dream of what it must have been like. The sea in this area was just teeming with fish. Apparently the old blokes, they just put a hook in, they didn't even have to bait the hook. You know, fish were just about walking on water to get in your boat. And the only danger was that you'd catch so many, you'd sink your ship. You know, that was the only reason that ships would come home to shore, was because they were so full.
The early settlers flourished, and the bountiful fishing laid the foundation for a growing economy. Early settlers included sealers, whalers, and various seamen. A young newlywed couple, Sonny and Matilda Dixon, also joined the group in search of a new beginning. Matilda Dixon was born Matilda Schultz on December 24, 1803, the youngest of 7 children. Her father left the family 1 week after Matilda was born, forcing her mother and older siblings to try and scrape by, doing any menial jobs available. Matilda's life changed the day she met the strapping young sailor named Sonny Dixon. On leave from a month at sea, Sonny spent his time at the bakery where Matilda worked. It was love at first sight for both of them. Unfortunately, like any fishing village, there was bound to be accidents. One of the most tragic took place on January 13, 1836, when the whaling vessel Guiding Light got caught in a horrible storm and was lost at sea. Records indicate that 15 of the townsmen were killed that day. Matilda Dixon's husband, Sonny, was one of those men. The balance of an established fishing industry and the growth of a prosperous mainland helped the town thrive. But something was obviously missing for Matilda Dixon. Her life was her husband, and he was gone. The growth around her seemed to leave Matilda confused. Matilda Dixon loved to bake. Once Sonny passed on, she began baking for the local children. Matilda used to bake a special cake for children who lost their teeth, just something to mark the occasion. The children loved it and would wait in anticipation. Although many of the parents thought the practice a little strange, they knew that Matilda was a good person and it made the children happy.
The original townspeople understood the history and were very supportive of her. The newer people to the town had their suspicions. That black cloud that seemed to follow Matilda through her life was still there, and they sensed it, I think.
It was during a cold night in 1840 when a terrible oven fire raced through Matilda's house. Many say while she was trying to finish some special treats for the children. By the time the town came to her house, the fire was put out. Matilda refused to come to the door or seek assistance. Things changed for Matilda in the town. She no longer went out during the day or allowed the children to stop by. The town began looking at her with a little more skepticism.
Oh, it was such a tragedy. But Matilda was strong. She had a good heart. Well, she didn't bake for the kids any longer, but she still exchanged gifts for their teeth. Now she had to wait until dark, though, until the town was asleep.
The children would leave a tooth wrapped in a handkerchief tacked to their front door, and Matilda would wander the streets, leaving small change at the house's doorstep. It was rumored her face was hidden behind a simple porcelain mask. Matilda's acts of kindness and her tragic past helped ease many of the townspeople's growing anxiety surrounding her strange actions. The night of September 23, 1841 changed everything. It was late one afternoon when 2 young children told their parents they were paying the tooth fairy a visit and they'd be right back. Hours passed and still the children were gone. Their parents' concern quickly turned to anger as they began blaming the crazy old woman for the children's disappearance.
Oh yeah, it was a crazy night. You know, they're dividing up into groups, people are going off in all directions. Only problem was half of them had been in the pub all afternoon. You know what blokes are like when they sit around and drink, they get 10 foot tall and bulletproof. One group, led by a bloke called Colin O'Donnell, grabbed torches, rope, whatever they could find. Next thing, they're banging on Matilda's door.
Well, Matilda heard them coming. She locked the doors, she hid behind a table. She was screaming for them to leave her alone. Finally, the men broke down the door and pulled her out of her own house. As they dragged her out, this huge jar of baby teeth spilled across the floor.
The mob dragged her to a huge tree. She was sobbing, holding her face in her hands. 2 of the men threw a noose around a tree limb. The others were trying to pry Matilda's hands away from her face so they could put the noose around her neck. She put up a fierce struggle, screaming at the men not to peek. Finally, they pulled her hands away. Her porcelain mask fell to the ground as they tightened the noose and quickly raised her up. After a few minutes, Matilda Dixon was dead. The men took a deep breath, bringing finality to their act of justice.
Well, the townspeople stopped dead in their tracks when they saw Matilda Dixon's lifeless body dangling from the tree, her white gown blowing in the breeze. Then the crowd slowly parted, revealing the 2 small children everyone was looking for. Well, the head of the lynch mob's eyes opened wide when he saw that, and he rushed over and cut Matilda's body down, quick smart.
It was too late. Matilda Dixon was dead, an entire town guilty of her murder. Matilda Dixon's death was reported as accidental asphyxiation by the local authorities, and her body quietly buried in an unmarked plot in the town's cemetery. Her murder became the town's dirty secret. In 1861, the town continued its desecration of Matilda Dixon when they needed to move the original cemetery to make room for modern expansion. As part of this move, Matilda was supposed to be relocated to a final resting place. Unfortunately, her body was lost and to this day has never been found. The next 60 years were filled with prosperity and happiness for the town of Port Fairy. Business boomed, the community grew, and the fishing industry made a major comeback. The tragedies that surrounded Matilda Dixon and the town she called home were a distant memory. Unfortunately, the calm could not last forever. In 1951, the plaque that was dedicated to Matilda's memory was stolen and the area vandalized. Soon after, a group of teens began disappearing. All were rumored to be involved in the desecration of Matilda's memorial.
We used to hear the stories about the crazy Port Fairy kids, the ones who'd disappeared. Funny thing was, we always thought, no, they'd just gone on a surfing holiday or just shot through because they didn't want to live in Port Fairy with all its crazy stories. But it's funny now, I've lived here a while, you start to wonder if there might be something in it.
The town feared a serial killer was in their midst. Even talk of the curse of the Tooth Fairy began to surface. Local law enforcement did a thorough investigation and filed most of the cases as runaways.
The kids probably ran away to Melbourne and never bothered coming back. No. The Tooth Fairy got them.
In 1953, a new plaque was erected in Matilda's honor. There have not been any incidents attributed to the curse of the Tooth Fairy ever since.
Matilda went through so much. She was reduced to the point of a freak show. To the point where she had to wear a mask. She was a strong woman. A good woman. She didn't deserve to die.
In a weird twist of fate, the curse is now considered a legend, and the small town of Port Fairy, Australia, has become a tourist destination for many of those who are drawn to the sad life and tragic death of Matilda Dixon, the Tooth Fairy.